My parents sold my life's work for $5 million behind my back. They called it securing my future. The very next day, a tech journal published an article valuing the potential of my project at over $3 billion, and they called me, crying. What they didn't know, what they couldn't possibly understand, was that the piece of paper they signed was worthless. They had given away the frame, but I still held the masterpiece. My name is Emily, and I'm 28 years old. For the last 6 years, my entire world has revolved around a single project, Elysian. It's an adaptive AI learning platform, but that's just a technical way of saying it was my dream. While most people my age were out partying or climbing the corporate ladder, I was in my small home office, a room filled with the quiet hum of servers, the walls covered in whiteboards scribbled with complex algorithms, and the constant smell of brewing coffee. It was my sanctuary, a place fueled by a belief that I could create something that would genuinely help people. If you're watching this right now, and you've ever had a dream that no one else seemed to understand, drop a comment letting me know where you're viewing from. Before I tell you how this life-changing betrayal unfolded, hit that like and subscribe button. You'll want to see how a so-called worthless hobby became the center of a billion-dollar showdown that tore my family apart. To understand what happened, you need to understand my family dynamic. I have a brother, David. He's 2 years older, works in marketing, and has always been the golden child. He has the business degree, the charismatic smile, and the expensive car my parents helped him buy. I have a computer science degree, a quiet disposition, and a 10-year-old sedan I bought with my own savings. From day one, we were cast in different roles. David was the success story they could brag about at dinner parties. I was the quirky, introverted tech nerd, the project they didn't quite know how to manage. This pattern was established in childhood. I remember a science fair in middle school. I had spent a month building a small, functioning robotic arm from scratch. It won first place. I brought the blue ribbon home, and my parents said, "That's nice, honey," before putting it in a drawer. 2 weeks later, David's soccer team won a minor local tournament. His plastic trophy was placed in the center of the living room mantelpiece, where it stayed for years. My ribbon was a footnote. His trophy was a centerpiece. This wasn't just a feeling. It was reinforced with actions, year after year. When David wanted to launch a disruptive subscription box for artisanal dog treats, a venture that failed spectacularly within 6 months, my parents invested $30,000 without batting an eye. They called it supporting ambition. When I asked for a loan of just $2,000 to upgrade my server and buy a patent application for Elysian's core algorithm, my father, Mark, just laughed. "Emily, when are you going to get a real job?" he'd asked, ruffling my hair as if I were still a child. "There's no money in these little computer games. You need to be more like your brother, practical." I remember a particularly painful family dinner with their friends, the Hendersons. Mr. Henderson, a kind man, asked me what I did. I started to explain Elysian, my eyes lighting up. Before I could finish, my own father interrupted with a chuckle. "He plays on his computer," he said to the table. "We're hoping he grows out of it soon. Now, David, tell them about that new account you landed." I felt myself shrink in my chair, the heat of humiliation creeping up my neck. I spent the rest of the dinner in silence. I ended up working freelance coding jobs on the side for a year to fund it myself. Every achievement of mine was minimized, while David's most mediocre efforts were celebrated. I remember one Thanksgiving dinner vividly. David had just given a PowerPoint presentation at his mid-level marketing job. My mother, Susan, spent a full 20 minutes recounting how his boss had called his presentation visually engaging. Later that evening, I tried to show them a demo of Elysian's latest breakthrough, an algorithm that could predict a student's learning style with 98% accuracy. After 30 seconds, I saw my father's eyes glaze over as he discreetly checked the football score on his phone. My mother cut me off. "That's nice, son. A little complicated for us, though. Did you hear David is getting a corner office?" It was a constant, draining pattern. They saw my passion as a phase and my work as a hobby. Yet, ironically, they weren't shy about asking for my help. It wasn't just the big things, like fixing their laptops or setting up their smart home devices. It was the constant, small demands, the expectation that I would drop everything to troubleshoot their printer or reset their Wi-Fi password for the 10th time. It was the emotional cost of being needed but never valued. I did it because they were my family, and I guess on some level, I hoped that one day my contributions would finally be seen, that my value wouldn't be measured by how well I fit into their narrow definition of success. I was the family's unpaid IT department, the reliable, invisible son who fixed their problems while they invested their pride and their money in his brother. I had grown so used to this dynamic that I had accepted it as normal. But a storm was coming, and this deeply flawed foundation was about to crack wide open. I just had no idea that the very project they dismissed would become the catalyst for it all. The turning point, the event that dragged my quiet project out of the shadows and into their line of fire, was InnovateX. It's one of the biggest tech conferences in the country, a place where startups go to get discovered. Getting a booth there is incredibly difficult. I had submitted Elysian's application on a whim, never expecting to hear back. When the acceptance email arrived, my heart hammered against my ribs. I read it 3 times just to be sure. This was it. This was my chance to show the world, and maybe, just maybe, my family that Elysian was real. I was ecstatic. I called my parents, my voice buzzing with an energy they rarely heard from me. "I got into InnovateX. It's a huge deal. Some of the biggest investors in the world will be there." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Oh, that's nice, honey," my mother said, her tone lukewarm. "Is that the little computer fair downtown? Will there be snacks?" "No, Mom, it's in San Francisco," I explained, my excitement deflating slightly. "I'll need to fly out, set up a booth, present the demo. The booth fee alone is nearly all my savings, but it's worth it." I had to sell some of my old computer equipment just to afford the plane ticket. "San Francisco?" my father cut in, his voice laced with disapproval. "That sounds expensive, Emily. Are you sure you should be spending your savings on something like this? It seems frivolous. Your brother just closed a big account at work. He's taking us all out to a steakhouse to celebrate. That's a real accomplishment." I could hear David in the background shouting, "Tell him to bring back a sourdough bread bowl." Despite their lack of enthusiasm, a part of me still wanted their approval. Against my better judgment, I invited them to come with me, even offering to use some of my precious funds to cover their hotel room. I thought if they saw Elysian in a professional setting, surrounded by other innovators, they would finally understand. That was my first mistake. The conference was a whirlwind of energy. My small booth was nestled between a flashy VR gaming company and a drone delivery startup. I was nervous, but as I started demoing Elysian to interested attendees, my passion took over. People were impressed. I saw their eyes light up as they understood the potential personalized education for every child. Early diagnostics for learning disabilities. Corporate training tailored to individual employees. My family's reaction, however, was starkly different. My father stood at the back of the booth with his arms crossed, looking bored and occasionally sighing loudly. My mother spent most of her time complaining about the noise and the uncomfortable chairs. But it was David who truly revealed their mindset. He swaggered into the booth on the second day, not to offer support, but to take over. "You're not selling it right, little brother," he said, pushing me aside to talk to a potential investor. He started throwing around empty business jargon, synergy, leveraging assets, paradigm shift, while having absolutely no grasp of the technology. He was trying to sell my complex AI platform like it was a box of dog treats. The moment that changed everything came late that afternoon. A quiet, distinguished man named Miss Chen, a senior partner at Aura Dynamics, one of the most respected venture capital firms in Silicon Valley, approached the booth. He didn't care about David's buzzwords. He asked me deep, technical questions for nearly an hour. As he left, he handed me his card. "Your work has profound implications, Mr. Evans," he said. "We will be in touch." I was floating, but when I turned around, I saw a look on my family's faces I'd never seen before. It wasn't pride. It was a cold, calculating glimmer. For the first time, they weren't seeing my little hobby. They were seeing dollar signs. And the quiet project they had ignored for years was now something they wanted to control. The shift after the conference was immediate and jarring. The dismissive jokes were replaced by an unnerving level of interest. Suddenly, my parents and David wanted to have family business meetings about Elysian. They started calling it our project. "We need to be smart about this, Emily," my father said one evening, sitting at my kitchen table as if he were the CEO. He had brought a yellow legal pad and was trying to look official. "This Mr. Chen fellow is a big fish. We can't let him take advantage of you," David chimed in. "Exactly. You're the tech guy, but I understand the business side. We need to strike while the iron is hot. We should be looking for a quick acquisition. Cash out 5, maybe 10 million. Set the family up for life." He even suggested a new name. "How about Dave Tech? It's got a ring to it." I tried to explain my vision. "It's not about a quick sale," I said patiently. "Elysian has the potential to change education. I want to build a company, develop it properly, partner with schools." My mother cut me off with a sigh. "Oh, Emily, you're always so idealistic. Your brother is right. We need to think about providing for the family. Think of all the things we could do with that money." It was the first of many such conversations. They demanded to see my business plan, which was still a work in progress. They insisted I give them the passwords to my development servers for safekeeping. One evening, I came home to find David in my office, at my computer. "Just looking around," he said casually, trying to understand the assets. I saw that he had been trying to access my financial files. My home office, once my sanctuary, started to feel like a territory under siege. Their interference escalated. Without my knowledge, David started emailing people he knew, trying to shop the project around. I found out when I got a confused call from a marketing manager at a mid-sized software company. "Your brother pitched us your learning game," he said. "He sent us a very unprofessional one-page summary. To be frank, it made your project sound like a joke." I was mortified. I had to spend an hour doing damage control, apologizing for my brother's unauthorized actions. The worst incident involved David. Mr. Chen from Aura Dynamics had scheduled a follow-up call with me. David insisted on being on the call to handle the negotiations. During the call, while I was explaining a complex technical feature, I felt a heat rise in my neck as David interrupted. "What my brother is trying to say," he cut in, his voice slick and artificial, "is what's the bottom line? What's your offer? We're not interested in long-term partnerships. We're looking for a full buyout." I was mortified, frantically shaking my head at him, but he just waved my gestures away. I could hear the politeness drain from Mr. Chen's voice. "My interest is in the creator's vision," he said coolly. "Perhaps we can schedule another call when you are available to speak alone, Emily." After the call, I confronted David. "You can't do that. You nearly blew the biggest opportunity of my life." His response was chilling. "My opportunity? This is a family asset now, Emily. You built it, sure, but we're the ones who are going to make sure you don't get cheated. You should be thanking me." I felt increasingly isolated and stressed. The joy I once felt working on Elysian was being replaced by anxiety. I confided in my old college mentor, Professor Albright. He had been following my progress for years. After I explained the situation, his reaction was grim. "Emily, this is more serious than you think," he warned me over coffee. "They see your project as a winning lottery ticket they just found in your pocket. Their greed is blinding them. I've seen this happen before. A brilliant student of mine created a new kind of biodegradable plastic. His family pressured him into a bad deal, and he lost control of his own invention. You need to protect yourself, legally. Your intellectual property, your patents, your company structure. Lock it down, and don't give them access to anything." His words were a stark wake-up call. I had been trying to handle this as a family matter, appealing to reason and love. But he was right. This wasn't a family discussion anymore. It was a hostile takeover attempt. I spent the next week quietly meeting with an IP lawyer Professor Albright recommended, shoring up my legal defenses. I registered Elysian as a sole proprietorship under my name and ensured the patents were ironclad. I felt a pang of guilt, as if I were betraying them, but I was beginning to understand that I was simply protecting myself from their betrayal. I thought setting legal boundaries would be enough to hold them at bay. I was about to learn that for people like them, rules are just obstacles to be circumvented. The final, unforgivable act of betrayal happened over a long weekend. Professor Albright had advised me to take a couple of days off, to clear my head and get some distance. "You can't create when you're constantly in defense mode," he'd said. I took his advice and drove up to a small cabin in the mountains, a place with no Wi-Fi and spotty cell service. The silence was incredible. Walking through the woods, I felt my mind clear. I filled a notebook with new ideas for Elysian, a module for special needs education, an application for language learning. I felt that old spark of excitement return. I had left a spare key to my house with my parents, as I always did, for emergencies. I never imagined they would define emergency as an opportunity for larceny. I returned on Sunday evening, feeling refreshed and ready to tackle the challenges ahead with a clearer mind. As I pulled into my driveway, I saw my father's car. I smiled, thinking they had come over to welcome me back, maybe with a home-cooked meal. When I walked inside, my entire family, my father, my mother, and David was sitting in my living room. They weren't smiling, they were beaming, looking at me with an unnerving, triumphant expression that sent a jolt of ice through my veins. "You're back," my father said, standing up. "Perfect timing. We have some incredible news." "What's going on?" I asked, a knot of unease tightening in my stomach. The air in the room felt thick and strange. David was practically vibrating with smug energy. He held up a document folder with a flourish. "We did it, Emily. We secured your future. We secured the family's future." Oh, my mother clasped her hands together. "We had an offer, a very generous one. We knew you'd be too sentimental to take it, so we acted on your behalf. We knew what was best." My blood ran cold. The phone felt like a block of ice in my hand. "What did you do?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. My father explained, his voice full of self-congratulation. Apparently, while I was gone, a rival company, Vulcan Industries, had reached out to David. They had seen the buzz about Elysian after InnovateX and wanted to acquire it quickly before a bigger player like Aura Dynamics could swoop in. They made a cash offer of $5 million. David, seeing his chance to be the hero, had convinced my parents that this was a once-in-a-lifetime deal. Using the spare key, they had entered my house. They went into my office, my sanctuary, and took the physical prototype I used for demos, a custom-built server I called the Oracle. Then, my father, leveraging the fact that I had once listed him as an emergency contact on a bank form years ago, managed to convince Vulcan's lawyers that he had the authority to act on my behalf. They had signed a contract selling the rights and the physical prototype of Elysian for $5 million. $5 million, Emily, David said, shaking my shoulder. We're rich. You can finally relax and stop playing with those computers all day. He then added the line that broke me. See? I told you I knew the business side. You build the toys, I make the deals. It's the perfect partnership. I stared at them, my mind struggling to process the sheer audacity, the profound violation. Their voices started to sound distant, muffled, as if coming from underwater. They hadn't just gone behind my back. They had used my trust, my home, my work, and sold my dream out from under me. They weren't celebrating my success, they were celebrating the cashing out of my soul. You had no right, I said, the words catching in my throat. My father's expression hardened. The fake paternal warmth vanished. Don't be ungrateful, Emily. We did this for you. For this family. That money will be managed properly by me and your brother. You'll get a nice allowance, of course. In that moment, any lingering hope I had for our relationship died. They didn't see me. They saw a resource to be exploited. They hadn't just sold my project, they had sold me. The grief was so sharp it felt like a physical blow. But underneath the grief, a cold, hard resolve began to form. They thought they had won. They thought they held all the cards. They had just declared war, and they had no idea I was the one holding all the ammunition. As they continued to celebrate their brilliant business move, I retreated into a state of calm, methodical clarity. The shock gave way to a chilling focus. They had made a catastrophic mistake, not just morally, but legally and technically. My so-called Voorhees-Bemeert wasn't just one thing. It was a fortress of protections I had built, some by design, some by virtue of how technology works. First, the technology itself. What they had given Vulcan Industries was the Oracle prototype, a physical server box with a limited, sandboxed version of the software. It was impressive for a demo, but it was just the tip of the iceberg. To use an analogy, they had sold a beautiful, high-tech car with no engine, no transmission, and no steering wheel. The real heart of Elysian, the core algorithm, the millions of lines of source code, the constantly learning neural network wasn't in that box. It was stored on a series of encrypted, cloud-based servers that could only be accessed by a multi-factor authentication process tied to my biometrics. Without me, the prototype was a useless, expensive paperweight. Second, the legal protections. Following Professor Albright's advice, I had already secured the intellectual property. The patents for Elysian's core processes were filed and registered under one name only: mine. The project itself was the property of my registered sole proprietorship, Elysian Innovations. They had sold an asset they had absolutely no legal title to. What they had signed wasn't a contract. It was a confession of fraud. Third, and perhaps most importantly, was the human element. My team consisted of two other brilliant programmers, Maria and Ben, who had been working with me part-time out of pure belief in the project. Their loyalty was to the vision and to me, not to a paycheck. Without them, scaling or even maintaining Elysian would be impossible. They thought they had sold the golden goose. In reality, they had sold a plastic decoy. I excused myself, claiming I needed some air to process the good news. They barely noticed, already arguing about whether to buy a lake house or a condo in Florida. I went into my bedroom, closed the door, and made 2 phone calls. The first was to Sarah Jenkins, the IP lawyer. I explained the situation in a low, steady voice. There was a long pause on her end, followed by a sharp intake of breath. Emily, what they've done is breathtakingly illegal, she said, her voice a mixture of shock and professional fury. This is wire fraud, patent infringement, and unauthorized sale of assets to start. From a legal perspective, they've handed you a cannon to fight their water pistol. Vulcan Industries has been duped, and your family has opened themselves up to a world of legal pain. We formulated a plan. She would start by drafting cease and desist letters and preparing a lawsuit. But she advised me to wait, to let them think they had succeeded. The deeper they dig this hole, she said, the more leverage you'll have. The second call was to Mr. Chen at Aura Dynamics. I took a huge risk, but my gut told me he was a man who valued integrity. I laid out the situation honestly. I told him about my family's interference and the fraudulent sale to Vulcan. I expected him to withdraw his interest, to see me and my project as too much trouble. Instead, he was silent for a moment. Then he said, "Emily, I've been in this business for 30 years. I've seen greed destroy brilliant ideas more times than I can count. What you're describing is a hostile situation, but it also tells me you are the indispensable core of this creation." He then made an offer that solidified my plan. "Let them play their hand," he said. "I once had a partner who tried to sell our first company out from under me. Integrity is the most valuable asset, Emily. You have it. Aura Dynamics' interest is not in your prototype. It's in you and your vision. Our offer still stands, and it will be for a partnership, not a buyout. And it will be significantly more than $5 million. Let me know when you are ready to proceed." I hung up the phone, my path crystal clear. This was no longer just about protecting my work. It was about reclaiming my life. My plan was simple. I would let my family have their moment of triumph. I would let them believe they had outsmarted me. I would let them organize their celebratory dinner. And at that dinner, I would dismantle their fantasy, piece by painful piece, right in front of their eyes. They wanted a business meeting. I was going to give them a masterclass in consequences. My family, blinded by greed and arrogance, decided the perfect venue for their victory celebration was a private room at a Michelin-starred restaurant downtown, a place we could never have afforded before. The irony was thick enough to cut with a steak knife. They were spending money they didn't have, celebrating a deal that wasn't real. The air was filled with the clinking of crystal glasses and their loud, self-congratulatory laughter. I walked into the room to the sight of them toasting with champagne. My father, Mark, was holding court, telling my brother David how he had inherited his sharp business instincts. My mother, Susan, was already looking at yacht brochures on her phone. They greeted me with condescending pats on the back. "There he is, the man of the hour," David announced, raising his glass. "To Emily, the brain behind our new family fortune." I let them enjoy their delusion for a little while longer. I sat through the appetizers, listening to them divvy up my life's work. David was going to take over as CEO of whatever shell company they planned to create, and his first executive order would be a company ski trip to Aspen. My father would be the CFO, lecturing us about his brilliant investment strategy. My mother would handle public relations. They offered me the title of Chief Technical Officer, with the clear implication that I would be taking orders from them. Finally, when the main courses arrived, my father slid the folder containing the Vulcan Industries contract across the table with a theatrical flourish. "All right, Emily. Just a few more things to sign here to make the transfer of assets official. Just a formality." I looked down at the papers and then back up at their expectant faces. I took a slow sip of water. "No," I said calmly. The celebratory mood screeched to a halt. "What do you mean, no?" my father demanded, his face clouding over. David's smug smile faltered. "I mean, I will not be signing these," I said, pushing the folder back towards him, "because this contract is a work of fiction, and you have committed a serious crime." David scoffed. "Don't be a sore loser, Emily. The deal is done. We just need you to cooperate. The deal is not done, I said, my voice gaining strength. Because you cannot sell what you do not own. End footnote. Right on cue, the door to the private room opened. 2 people walked in. The first was my lawyer, Sarah Jenkins, holding a briefcase. The second was Mr. Chen from Aura Dynamics. My family stared, completely dumbfounded. My father's face went from ruddy with champagne to pale with shock. My mother dropped her fork with a clatter. "Who are these people?" he stammered. Sarah introduced herself coolly. "I am Emily's legal counsel, and I'm here to inform you that you have engaged in multiple felonies, including conspiracy to commit fraud and the illegal sale of intellectual property protected by U.S. patent law." She placed a thick document on the table. "This is a preliminary injunction to be filed tomorrow morning, along with a lawsuit for damages." My mother started to protest. "This is a family matter." "It stopped being a family matter, mister," Chen interrupted, his voice quiet but commanding. "When you attempted to defraud a publicly traded company and sell an asset you have no rights to." He turned to my father and David. "Vulcan Industries believes they purchased a revolutionary AI platform. What you sold them was an empty box. My firm, Aura Dynamics, on the other hand, understands where the true value lies." He looked directly at me. "Emily, as we discussed, Aura Dynamics is not interested in buying Elysian. We are interested in partnering with its creator. We are prepared to offer a seed investment of $25 million for a 20% stake in your company, Elysian Innovations, valuing it at $125 million. That is our starting point." The silence in the room was absolute. You could hear a pin drop. The color drained completely from David's face. My mother looked like she was going to faint. My father just opened and closed his mouth like a fish out of water. "But the $5 million, he whispered. Sarah answered. "That $5 million is now evidence in a fraud case. Vulcan Industries will likely sue you for the return of that money, plus damages, once they realize they've been sold a lemon. You are in a catastrophic legal and financial position." I finally stood up, looking at the 3 people who were supposed to love and protect me. "You didn't do this for me," I said, my voice shaking with a year's worth of suppressed anger and hurt. I looked at David. "You were so desperate to be the business geniuses that you never bothered to understand the business." I looked at my parents. "And you were so invested in his success that you were willing to sacrifice my entire future to fund it. You saw my dream, and instead of helping me build it, you tried to smash it open for the cash inside. You were so blinded by greed you couldn't see the truth right in front of you." I picked up my coat. "The partnership with Aura Dynamics is moving forward. Elysian will be what I always dreamed it would be. But you will not be a part of it. You will not see a single cent. Consider this relationship, this family, officially dissolved." I walked out of the room, leaving them in the ruins of their own making, with a multi-million-dollar dinner bill they now had no way to pay. For the first time in my life, I felt truly free. Walking out of that restaurant was like stepping out of a pressure cooker. The cool night air felt electric on my skin. I didn't look back. In my car, I let out a breath I felt like I'd been holding for years. The overwhelming feeling wasn't triumph or revenge. It was an incredible, profound sense of relief. The weight of their expectations, their dismissiveness, their toxicity, it was gone. The next few days were a blur of productive action. Sarah Jenkins handled the legal fallout. Vulcan Industries, upon being informed of the fraud, immediately froze the $5 million payment and turned their legal cannons on my family. As Sarah had predicted, they were sued for fraud and misrepresentation. My family had to hire a lawyer they couldn't afford, and the celebratory fund they had imagined was instantly transformed into a legal defense fund. My first move was to find a new place to live and work. I packed up my home office, the place where Elysian was born, but had also become a battleground. I rented a sleek, modern loft downtown that would serve as both my new home and the first official headquarters for Elysian Innovations. As Maria, Ben, and I set up our new workspace, the energy was palpable. The first night, we ordered pizza and ate it on the floor, sketching out plans for our new server architecture on the back of the pizza box. It was a space of creation, not conflict. We worked late into the night, not because we had to, but because we were excited again. Maria, who had been quiet about my family but had clearly seen the stress I was under, put a hand on my shoulder. "It's good to have you back, Emily," she said. I realized then how much I had been missing, how much of my mental energy had been consumed by their drama. The cloud had lifted, and the passion for the project returned, stronger than ever. Mr. Chen and Aura Dynamics were true to their word. Their team of lawyers and financial experts helped me structure the company properly. The $25 million seed funding was wired to the new company account. Seeing that balance on the screen was surreal, but it wasn't the number that mattered. It was what it represented: validation, opportunity, and the resources to finally bring Elysian's full potential to life. My family tried to contact me, of course. First came the angry, threatening voicemails from my father and David, accusing me of betraying them. Then came the tearful, manipulative calls from my mother, begging me to think of the family and fix this. I listened to one voicemail from David where he called me a traitor and a thief, and I just felt a wave of pity. He still didn't get it. I didn't answer. I had Sarah inform their lawyer that all communication should go through her. I needed to create a clean break to heal and to focus. One evening, about 2 weeks after the showdown, I was looking out the large window of my new loft, watching the city lights twinkle below. For so long, I had made myself small to fit into their world. I had downplayed my ambitions, hidden my successes, and absorbed their negativity. Now, standing in this new space that I had earned, I realized I wasn't just building a company. I was building a life on my own terms, defined by my own values. The road ahead would be challenging, but it was mine. And for the first time, I felt an exhilarating sense of peace. The storm was over, and a new dawn was breaking. 10 months later, my life was unrecognizable. Elysian Innovations was no longer a 3-person team in a loft. We were a thriving company with 50 employees in a state-of-the-art office building. The partnership with Aura Dynamics had been a resounding success. We had launched a pilot program of the Elysian platform in over 100 schools across the country, and the results were phenomenal. Student engagement had skyrocketed, and teachers were reporting that our adaptive learning tools were helping them identify and support struggling students in ways they never could before. We received a letter from one teacher in a rural district. She told us about a young girl who had been labeled a problem student for years. Our platform identified that she had a severe form of dyslexia and adapted her curriculum accordingly. For the first time, the girl was reading at her grade level. Elysian didn't just teach her to read. The teacher wrote. It gave her back her confidence. Reading that letter was more satisfying than any financial report. The tech world was buzzing. Elysian was being hailed as the future of education. And I found myself, the quiet coder, featured in tech journals and invited to speak at conferences, not as an unknown hopeful at a small booth, but as a respected CEO. My personal life had also found a new, quiet rhythm. The wealth was there, but I hadn't bought a flashy car or a mansion. I drove the same sedan, but I had paid off my student loans and set up a foundation to provide scholarships for promising computer science students from low-income backgrounds, the kind of support I wished I'd had. The greatest luxury the money afforded me was peace of mind and the ability to give back. As for my family, Their lives had also become unrecognizable, but in a starkly different way. The lawsuit from Vulcan Industries had financially ruined them. They had to sell my childhood home to cover the legal fees and the settlement. I saw the for sale sign on the lawn one day, a painful pang of nostalgia mixed with the sad finality of it all. My father's hardware store, which had been struggling for years, finally went under without my free tech support to keep it afloat. They were forced to move into a small, rented apartment in a less desirable part of town. David's fall was the hardest. His reputation in the local business community was shattered. Fired from his marketing job for the scandal, no one would hire him. The last I heard, he was working as a cashier at a big box store, the expensive car long repossessed. Their friends, the ones they had been so eager to impress, now avoided their calls. The public humiliation was, in many ways, a harsher sentence for them than the financial loss. One day, I received a letter. It was from my mother. It wasn't demanding or manipulative. It was quiet, sad, and for the first time, it felt honest. She wrote about the shame and regret they lived with every day. "David just sits in his room," she wrote. "He won't talk to us. Your father pretends he's strong, but I hear him at night. We broke our own family. We were proud of you all along. We just didn't know how to show it. We hope one day you can find it in your heart to forgive us." I read the letter several times. I didn't feel anger, but I also didn't feel an urge to rush back and fix their problems. The wounds were too deep for that. I discussed the letter with my therapist, processing the complex grief for the family I wished I'd had. She helped me realize that forgiveness didn't have to mean reconciliation. I decided to respond, not with a phone call, but with an action. Through my foundation, I made a large, anonymous donation to a local community aid fund that helped families facing eviction and financial hardship in their area. I knew the fund would likely help them, but they would never know it came from me. It was my way of closing the chapter, offering compassion from a safe distance, honoring the part of me that still cared, without sacrificing the peace I had fought so hard to win. Our relationship would never be what it once was, and perhaps that was for the best. I had my own family now, my team, my friends, the community we were building with Elysian. And that family was built on a foundation of mutual respect, shared vision, and genuine support. Looking back on that entire ordeal, I realized the most valuable thing I gained wasn't the money or the success. It was the brutal, clarifying lesson about my own worth. For years, I had sought validation from people who were incapable of giving it. I measured my success by their standards, hoping that if I just worked a little harder, achieved a little more, they would finally see me. The ultimate betrayal forced me to stop looking outward for approval and start looking inward. I learned that your passion is not a hobby just because someone else calls it one. Your dream is not small just because others lack the vision to see it. The hardest, but most important boundary you will ever set is the one that protects your own self-worth from the people who try to diminish it, even if those people are your own family. The money didn't change who they were. It simply amplified what was already there. And the project they tried to sell didn't just make me successful. It gave me the freedom to see that I was enough, all on my own. Have you ever had to protect a dream or a passion from the doubts of those closest to you? What did you learn from that experience? Share your stories in the comments below. I'd love to hear them. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button. Subscribe for more real-life lessons, and share this video with someone who might need a reminder that their vision is valid. Thank you for listening. And remember, never let anyone else write the final chapter of your story. You are the author, and you hold the pen.